Today we're discussing character interrogations on the show, so stay tuned.
Hi, and welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie writers on their journey to publication. I'm Jamie Hirschberger. I write short fiction under the pen name J.R. Nichols.
And I'm Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
Welcome to our show, everyone. If you are listening live, we really would love to see you in our chat. Good morning, Liz. We already have one very active chatter. We have a great community here on the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, and many of you are able to join us live, and we super appreciate you. But we also appreciate those of you who listen to us on any of the popular streaming platforms or other places where podcasts are made available, including all of you who are listening in, oh goodness, where was it? Because we are once again number 78 in Sri Lanka. Yeah.
Somewhere.
Yeah. We're famous in Africa. So hi
Catherine Carroll
Maria.
is,
Yeah.
Catherine is here, and Maria is here. Good morning.
Good morning.
It has been a while since you've been here, Maria. We're glad to have you here.
Yeah, and I was fortunate enough to speak with her, and things are all going super well in her neck of the woods too. So yeah, good to see you here this morning, because she said that she might be able to join because things are evening out. So we do appreciate. Oh, hi, Gigi. We appreciate all of you. We think that you're the best and awesome, and we really count on you to make this podcast great, especially when we are down by half as far as podcast hosts go. As you know,
And the better half, right? The better half is gone. You guys are left with us today.
Our wonderful friend Rhonda, she's been on a long sort of leave of absence dealing with some health issues. And then today, Tina Catane has some family matters to attend to at the last minute. And so when we get into the meat of this episode, we hope that you'll forgive us because we were kind of using Tina as one leg of our format.
Let's be honest. She was supposed to make the podcast episode better.
She was going to. We apologize in advance. Okay. So, with that said, I guess what we will do is launch into our first segment, which is called What's Up? Jen, what is up with you?
Oh, I get to go first?
I guess
there's only two of us.
I know. I have several things, so maybe I should go and then you should go.
No, it's totally fine. I'll go first and I'm with you. So, I want to talk about yesterday. We had our second writing sprints live. And so Maria messaged me earlier to say that I don't know why it's showing all that stuff there. That she was confused with the writing sprints live. She thought it meant we're going to be live. I just meant like live in person. And we've been trying to communicate that. So just so you guys know, if you are local in Michigan here, we are having every Thursday in April, we are having live writing sprints live. In Ortonville at the Refinery Church of the Nazarene there, and actually inside their little coffee co that's there. And the first week I was kind of sick, so we didn't really promote it a whole lot. And then this week Tina had a lot going on. We kind of promoted it. Anyway, we were there and we actually had two listeners that were supposed to be coming. One listener had a death in the family and we've been praying for her. But if you guys remember our friend Jason from the chat, who hasn't been in the chat a lot, he does still listen. He just isn't here with us live. He drove an hour to be with us and get some writing done. And gosh darn it, if Jason didn't get twice as many words as me. He did great. He got a lot of words and he said it felt really good to be back writing again. And so yeah, I got words in yesterday. It was nice to get to hang out. Tina was able to join us for about half of it and then she had to go. And so yeah, if you are in Michigan, if you're anywhere near, like it might be worth an hour for you to drive, just for a little bit and come and get some words in and do some sprinting with us and just kind of get to hang out with us. So yeah, that was a really great time. I really enjoyed it.
So jealous. I was talking about how there's fear of missing out, but I'm actually missing out. So I am AMO, not FOMO. Amo, amo. Yes. And so Gigi says, "Yay, Jason." But Maria says the reason she hasn't been around is she moved house a month ago today. Yes, that it was not my news to share. I'm so glad you're sharing.
Mhm.
Her husband got a new job as a vicar in a different parish. So she's moved. It's been lovely to start getting to know the new church family. That's so great. So
That's
excited for you and your fresh start.
She says she's also been doing book 5 in her series in Camp Nano, and she hit 10,000 words yes That's awesome.
Yay! That's terrific.
Yeah,
She's going to hit her goal for sure.
for sure. She always does, I think. So and Liz says, "What's up? My writing is going okay. I've been writing during both nap times on school days. I'm on track to finish this draft by early or mid-June."
Yes.
Very
Love to
exciting.
hear it. That's
Very, very
awesome.
exciting.
And Liz is cheering for Maria in the
Mhm.
chat. I love our live chat.
Me too. Alright,
Okay,
Jamie, what's up with you?
yes. All right. Well, I warned Jen that this was going to be sort of a long what's up because like I have so much to share with everyone. So I have to say first of all that for at least a couple of weeks and I'm not sure how much longer because I have a dramatic change in my work schedule, I am not going to be able to be on the live broadcast, which is very sad. And I would try very much not to be like misty or teary or whatever about that. But it's something that's very good for me that I, need to pursue. And so just saying sort of like, see you soon. It's not
Mhm.
goodbye forever, but it's until trying to figure out how the new work schedule is going to affect me as far as my participation here. So that has been announced. And yeah. So now moving on to like my favorite thing, since I'm going to be missing at least 2 episodes, I would like to give 2 show and tell items to the podcast as my what's up today. So I saw somewhere, okay, someone told me if you want to sound intelligent, instead of saying you saw it on the internet, say you read somewhere. I read somewhere that you can glam up the tissue dispensing experience by finding a container with a small opening and taking your tissues out of the box and putting it in there. And
Yeah.
then it can be like fancy. So look what I found. Okay. It's golden crackle. Okay. But not only that, like if I just push this button, it lights up.
What?
I found 3 of these at the resale store, and now I've got bougie tissue holders for my
I
face.
love it.
Oops, that one didn't work so well. Well, I guess I don't have it was working yesterday, so I screwed it up by fishing my, light turner on or off. But anyway, the point is I gotta find a way to make it where these dispense properly because you can do it. And, my little, turn you on and offer box is there. Oh, here we go. It's
There you
fixed
go.
now. See? It's
That's
just a matter of
awesome.
fiddling with it. Yes, so you could get like anything with like a smaller opening here. I found
Mhm,
something beautiful with a big wide opening, but that didn't work so good. And
mhm.
also these
Because
can be
it'll
like
pull the whole thing out.
yes, these
Yeah.
could be cute little night lights for people who are in the rooms too. You know what I mean?
Yes.
All
I
right.
love
So,
that. And you
yes.
get it at a resale shop, even better. Like, I
Yes.
love buying used stuff. Yeah.
Me too, giving it a second life because like let's be honest, this is just like a globe with a light in it. I'm not exactly
Mhm.
sure. Anyway, whatever. Okay, so now here's my second show and tell item. If you at all happen to notice my Facebook the other day, I was like, I guess it's National Pet Day, and I do not have a pet, okay? And I'm like looking, everybody's got these cute pets. Oh, look at my pet, look at my pet. And I'm like,
I
oh
know what you're gonna pull
no.
out, and I'm so excited. I'm
I'm like, what could I do? Like, I could maybe get a pet. My landlord doesn't want me to have a dog or a cat, but like a fish. But then I'm balancing my desire to have a pet with like my desire to care for a pet. And it's just really not fair to bring a sentient creature into my life to then only just like I really don't want to take care of you. So instead, and Jen thinks she knows because I said,
We'll
well, I'm starting
see.
to see the appeal of a pet rock.
Yes.
But instead, I went
Oh.
I went a step above rock sentience, and I got a plant.
I'm so proud of you. Susan, do you see this? Susan, look,
Yes,
you've got a friend now.
I know, and I
Aw.
found this little charm to hang on my little bowl of nutrient water there, and this is called a prayer plant. So right now, you see it looks like this, but at night, it closes itself up. Isn't that cute?
That is cute, and you put it in water, not in dirt?
This came this way. Okay, it's really gimmicky. And like you could go online and people be like, these are horrible and they don't live well that way and blah blah blah. But I guess you can get hydroponic fluid and change the water. So really it's a whole lot more caring than I
Them
wanted to invest. It's certainly more caring than a rock. But I figure if I can keep this plant alive until my birthday in October, I will be ready to maybe add another plant to the collection. And I can maybe, because here's the thing, I feel like you always say you could talk to the plants and help them be
Mhm,
healthy and things like that. I'm going to really give it a go to try to keep the plant alive. And I
mhm.
felt guilty even riding home with it. I'm like, I know that you are destined to die. Like this is a death sentence coming home with me. My thumbs are so brown, it's not even funny. And but anyway, I'm optimistic because I really like the ideal of it going to sleep at night and waking up in the morning, and then I could tell it good morning and all this kind of stuff.
Catherine says, "Prayer plants are the best. I love to hear them at night when the leaves are folding up." You can actually hear them too?
That's interesting. I guess, yeah, if the leaves were big, like, yeah, I guess it would go like creakily, rustly.
Interesting. Okay, so speaking of, like, a brown thumb, I don't have a brown thumb. I'm usually like, I love plants, you know that. And I when we first moved here, I bought a bunch of plants and they were just slowly dying and I just don't know what happened. And finally we figured it out, it's because I was watering them with the sink water because the house we had before had good
Yeah.
water, but this house doesn't. So we have a softener and I was salting them to death and I didn't know that. So we stopped doing that. I only I use bottled water. I know that sounds so bougie, but that's what I do for my plants. Susan has an older, sibling that I've had for a while and it just started dying. And I can't explain why. I didn't change anything. I kept trying to, and how it was dying was it was just kind of like no longer staying in the roots and it was kind of they're falling over and like you could just pull the root system was just going. So I don't know what
Mm.
happened. So Susan and I are staying close because I'm so concerned that something's gonna happen to her. I need to pot her bigger. But people are like asking, like Maria said, Jen, did you just call your plant Susan? That's it. Did you guys not know about Susan? We had a whole like I've talked about her a lot. And Jason's like, "I caught that, LOL." Yeah. So, yeah, Susan's part of the
Yeah.
I know she's pretty quiet, but she's always here with us on the podcast. She's like our plant mascot. But now she's got a friend. You need to name your plant. You need to put
Oh,
the plant to where we can see her when you are on with us. So she's just
yes,
kinda there.
although my plant is a boy.
That's fine.
I think he's Herman the houseplant.
Boys and girls can be friends. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
Aw.
Gigi says, "I only have 1 live plant, about to turn 5 in the end of August, lesson, only 1 at a time."
You're giving me hope, Gigi, but here's the deal, because you know how you're like, "Oh, it's just in the water." Like, if it dies, I'm going to say it's because of this gimmicky packaging and marketing. It's not
Mhm.
me. It's not how I care for the plant. It's because it was only in this water situation. Of course, completely not my fault. And then I will probably, assign some other poor plant to a death sentence by dragging it into my house. But the ideal would be that I would like manage to make this plant live.
Mhm.
So we'll see what happens, right?
I see if you guys remember the episode where we talk about, I think we talked about genealogy and history and things like that, and I shared my aunt's plant that I had inherited that I came across an article about this
Mhm.
particular plant was in the same it was the plant, because it was when my aunt's friend passed away. She had a friend that was, like, about 20 years older than her. When she passed away, she left it to my aunt. Then when my aunt died, I inherited it. And according to the art, we don't know what the date of the article, but anyway, long story short, this plant is somewhere between 80 and 100 years old.
Wow.
And I'm doing great with it. It's still live. It's
Yay!
beautiful. When my mother passed, people will give plants sometimes in lieu of flowers. And so I have a couple plants that I got from the funeral home. And one of them is the same kind of plant. And that thing is giving me such a headache. Like, but I think part of the
Hmm.
problem is that if you get a plant from a florist, especially for a funeral or something, they wax the leaves. They put an oil on them
Oh.
to make them look shiny and pretty, but it's terrible for the leaves. And this is actually a succulent, so I just think that it's just taking a toll on it. So, um, Maria says, "I'm impressed, Jamie. I can keep my dog alive, but all my plants die. Plants don't let you know when they need feeding." True. She's like, "I've only got a cactus, but only because I barely have to water it."
Right?
And then Gigi
Yeah.
says, "Maria, I had a cactus. I killed it." The end.
I know. I mean, I was on the fence about getting a plant. I was even saying at work, and just probably seems super random to the people who are running around trying to take care of their tables. I'm like, do people who are against zoos also have, anger about houseplants? Because like they need the proper habitat, and most people
Right?
like are optimistic like me. Oh, hello, little friend, and then we just kill them. And so let's all be cheering for poor Herman and hope that he has a good long life.
I'm very excited about Herman.
Thanks.
And now I wanna get one. Now I gotta find one.
Oh, I'm saying just the ideal of it, like doing the open and close thing was like, yes, because it
That's
will
exciting.
also keep me kind of engaged. Do you know what I mean? My little short
Mhm.
attention span, whatever. Okay, so my what's up took up a sufficient amount of time. That's great. All right. So yeah, so we have to move on to the topic of the day, which is interrogations. No, interrogating your characters. Okay.
We need
Oh
to give a
man.
disclaimer. First of all, both Jamie and I are tired, which
Oh,
this feels like a late night episode. If you guys have been with us
does.
for any length of time, we have done a few late night episodes, and generally there's a lot of giggling. And it
Mhm.
feels like that already. And two, we are kind of already gave you a disclaimer earlier that Tina was supposed to be here to make this a good episode, and it's just gonna be an okay episode because it's based really on me. Like it's good. Like you're really just gonna find out about what I do, and then
Yeah.
with no like. So there you go.
Well,
There's a
and
disclaimer.
hopefully yes, well, you know what, Jen? The reason that we're talking about it though is because it's good and smart that you do what you do,
Well,
right?
thank you.
And
Thank you
what
very
we're
much.
talking yes, and what we're talking about is the title of our episode states is interrogating your characters. Do you know your characters? I mean, really know them? And why is that important? So like you say no, or like I know their name, or something, some kind of sassy response.
We
Why
all
is
have
that important?
yeah, we all have things that drive us crazy about other books, right? Or maybe even our
Sure.
own. And one of the things that drives me crazy is when I'm reading a book and I'm like, this character would never do that. Like I'm reading it and I'm invested in these characters, and then all of a sudden the character does something that's out of
Out of character.
character. Or,
Yeah.
like, I never can connect with the character because I don't really understand who the person is or, and, like, I've read books the entire way through, and some people choose to do this on purpose, that, they don't tell you anything about the physicality of the character, and they do that on purpose, and that's okay, I guess, if you make sure that every other part of the character is well developed, but in general, that's not always the case, and so, I think the problem is not that they're not a good writer, I think it's just they just writers don't really honestly know who their character is as deeply as they need to know before they start writing the story. So,
Yeah, Jen, I'm so glad that you put your finger on exactly what the problem is when an author does not know their character. And
mhm.
I think a lot of the times when new writers are struggling to get words, when they say, "I'm
Yes.
not someone who writes hundreds of thousands of words. I don't understand why my novel is not feeling full enough." I think that
Mhm.
the issue of not knowing your character is part of it, because you miss a little bit of the internal struggle, because you don't know what that is. That's all white
Mhm.
noise for you. So you don't, I mean, not only do your characters act out of character, but they
Right.
also are super flat for the reader.
Mhm.
And you're going to lose readers if they don't care.
Yes.
Care. You need to put the care in character.
Because
Okay.
when you're writing these characters, you care about them because you feel like you know them, but that's
Yes.
gotta get on page, and you have to really know, like, how well do I know them? Because as you're writing, especially if you're a discovery writer, I think, as you're writing, you discover something new about this person, and if it doesn't fit what you've already been writing about them, then there's a disconnect, and you have to go back and fix it, but you need to know that. So this is
Mhm.
not really a plotter versus discovery writer kind of a conversation. I believe everyone needs to do this. Now, you may do it like I do, or if you're a discovery writer, you may do more like what Tina does. And Tina will write a lot of stuff that never makes it into her book. She will
Mhm.
write like things to discover who her characters are and different things about their personality. And it may never go into their book, these scenes that she writes, but it helps her to know her character more so that when she is writing the things that are going to stick, like it's genuine to what how that person would react.
Yes, and what's interesting is as you're talking, I'm like, "So what do I do?" I do not know because, like, I'm only working on my very first novel, but what I'm recognizing is my character started off being a very different person than he is in this draft
Mm,
because, the discovery that I did as I was writing it was like, "This is who he actually is." You know what I
mhm,
mean? And all of this work that you're talking about is things that I do when I'm not fingers to keyboard, when I'm
mhm,
just showering and thinking about my book or working and thinking about my book. I do ask and answer these questions, but just
right,
not necessarily in a formulaic way. So
right,
you can still do this work without putting pen to paper. It's just
right.
important that you do the work.
Right. And if you are a discovery writer and you don't do this at all, you're gonna probably have to do like what Jamie is doing or even more work going back and as you're editing, making sure that you're answering these questions. Do the discovery first, but then go back and answer like write some questions out and answer them and make sure that as you do your first round of edits that everything runs true to who you think the character is. So,
Yeah, and I think that at the end of the day, it's like the reason there's revisions that have to happen is because there is a disconnect. He's
mhm,
behaving this way, but in the but he was this person. No, that's not like the more you know your character, the more they
mhm,
will behave the way that they're supposed to
right.
behave.
And Jamie, you know, because 'cause you're my editor, you know that there've been times that you've stopped, like, in within the editing part and given me a note and been like, This is not right. This is I don't
Mhm.
believe this character would act this way." Or you've pointed something out, like, "I feel like this is a little too intimate between these 2 characters," like, you know what I mean? Like, and so there will still be issues, right? But
Right.
this really helps to eliminate them, I
Yes.
believe,
Well,
the
and
stage.
also questions about like, do you mean for the reader to believe this about your character? Because whatever
Yes.
you write is going to give this particular impression.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
Alright. So I would say so what I do is I have a document and I have a blank one, like with all the questions in it. And then at the bottom of that of all the questions is a blank like outline for me to fill in. Like it's a table actually how I do it. And so with that having said, I'm gonna go through the questions that I use, but we've chunked them into like categories. Was it 3 or 4 categories that three
Um,
categories?
yeah.
Of, like, kind of, like, questions that we think that you need to be asking. So the first one is, I think, obvious. The first category of questions is the physical questions. Who is your character? So the way I do it is I actually take the character's name and I'll say, "Who is Cade?" And I put that in the document, and then I answer who he is. Cade is a rancher in Texas in the 18 or the late I don't I gotta look it up. In the 1800s after the Civil War, blah, blah, blah. Like, I kinda talk to kinda give you a generic who he is. What's his name? Shockingly, you will write sometimes and get into the book and you will forget your character's name or their
Which
last
is
name or the spelling. Like, it's nice to have this somewhere to go back and look at.
yeah, so it's just where the XXX comes in when you're sprinting.
Yes, exactly. And it's just so much
Um,
nicer to be able to go back to this document and it be right there than have to go back through. Like, I know I've been making some mistakes in Widows of the West 1 because both of my characters, they're the male and female, their name starts with C, which is okay because 'cause they're male, female, it should make it easy, but both their last names are M.
mm.
And I found that I've given Cade 2 different last names in my
Oh.
sprinting. So, I gotta go back and fix that too. But anyways, so their name, what is their name? How old are they? Like, you might think it's not gonna affect your book, that's okay, put it in there. Figure out how old they are. If you don't know, right, I don't know, and then when you figure that out, you come back. What color is their hair? What is their body shape? All the physicality kinda questions that you can think of, then you need to put that in this under this category of physical questions. Um, Gigi says, and I can't get my mouse to work. Gigi says, you have to know your characters well enough to understand and be able to write realistically how they will change.
There you go.
Exactly. If you don't have a character art for your characters, nobody cares. It's just a story, and everybody can write a
Mhm.
story. A novel has not only the underlying story of what's happening, but the character arc. I absolutely agree. Um, Piper says, "I forget to include enough physical description." So and
Mhm.
people like it. People wanna because they wanna be able to see them in the movie that's happening in their head, right? Um, Liz says, "I wrote a whole book with a character named brackets husband."
That's awesome. I love it.
Well, that's kinda how Mr. Boss
It
started
is,
in the
yeah.
Marnie, and you guys are convincing me that I should just refer to him as Mr. Boss in the novel, so
That could be
maybe
so fun.
it could be. I think that I think it's gonna happen. See, that's so I love this podcast. I wouldn't have done that on my own, so alright.
All right, so we got to you're gonna ask these physical questions, and I think it's so funny, Jen, that, like, this is why we group them up this way because I'm sure even as you're filling these in, because what you said was Cade last name is this old of a guy from this place. And so the geography just kind of tails right after that. And that's the next section that we get into is like geographically, who is this person? So
Right.
where is he or she from? And where do they live now? Is it different? Is it the same? Because it's going to change your character. If you've never left your county, you're going to be a different person than someone who has traveled extensively. It's funny. Marie and I were talking about that this week, how there's a vast difference between people who have traveled and people who haven't. It's going
Mhm.
to make you behave differently.
And where you're from really affects your personality. Like, if I'm writing a character from the Midwest and I don't mention, like, things like the Midwest goodbye kind of a thing, or the fact that, like, how important family is, or some sort of cultural thing that is specific to the Midwest. If I write a character from the South and I don't give them a Southern accent or
Mm,
refer to things in the South, if I write a character, you know what I mean? Like, it's important. So you can't just say, "Oh, they're from this." I'm gonna make them from Texas, but you don't really know anything about people that live in Texas.
right.
It's not gonna feel, So where are they from is a very important question.
True. Yeah.
Who is
And
their family?
yeah, that feeds
Like,
right into it.
because
Are
is
they
it
all back in Texas?
are they gonna play into the story? I mean, even if they never show up in the book, they're gonna play into the story. In my book, Cade's immediate family doesn't show up, but they show up.
Mhm.
It makes a difference. It affects, like, his tragedy, his struggle in life, and his pain. So, which we'll get to that in a second.
Yep.
So,
How did he or she end up where they
mm,
are now?
yeah.
And how long
Cade's
have they
where
been there?
Cade moved for a reason. He's there for a reason. So,
For
yeah.
a reason. You see, like,
Mhm,
yes, all of this builds into making this a more real and real person. And Jen, you're
mhm.
just like, matter of fact, this is true. How real are these characters to you?
If you can't answer these questions, they're probably not real enough yet for you to start writing. You can start doing some discovery writing, but to really write the book and be able to, like, get into the book, you probably don't know them well enough. And then even some simple questions like, what is their job? You might think, well, it doesn't really play into the story, but it does into the personality. Like, not everybody is meant to be a teacher. So if your character is gonna be a teacher, that's gonna tell you a little bit about their personality, unless they're
Yes.
bad at it. If they're bad at it, that will also tell you a little bit about their
Yes,
personality. Yeah.
exactly. And that's I think the point of answering these questions too, is not because you're like gonna make it up, but you are gonna compare this to what you already know about
Mhm.
the character. Do you understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Or depending on how you write. See, because this isn't me, but I know it's true for some people. If you know this is the direction that your story is going to go, there needs to be motivation for your character to act in that way. And
Mhm.
so, therefore, you have to then decide because it doesn't make any sense for someone who's never left their county to just get a wild, idea that they're going to go do blah, 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 unless you give them the reason for that.
Yes.
So it's like you have to like answer these questions to first of all move your story forward and to just make your characters more real.
I absolutely agree. Liz says, a beta reader once told me to think of the fan art as a case for physical description. That's
Mm.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, like, I mean, we talked about this yesterday, Jason and Tina and I, about, like, the first time that someone, like, use the term fangirling. It doesn't have to be a woman, but, like, it's weird when you meet a fan for the first time because you're like, "I'm just a normal person." But when you write something, there will be people that love it so much that you will have fans. And so I agree, like, the physical description, think about someone making art based on your work, and that might help you. Yep. Piper
Mhm.
says, "I find a photo of a model to refer back to so my details, right throughout the story." I do the
Oh,
same
Jen,
thing.
your Instagram idea
Mhm.
or Pinterest, it was Pinterest, right?
Pinterest.
You
Mhm.
go and you pin pictures of people that you think, "Oh, this is the right hair shade, this is the right
Mhm.
complexion, this is the right figure, this is their fashion sense," and,
Mhm.
you can get good physicality ideas that way.
Anna, for my first book, I was sitting having lunch with a friend of mine, and I noticed that had never noticed her eyes before, and they were amber colored, just like her hair well, she colors her hair. She's a stylist, but her
Mhm.
roots, her real hair color is an amber color, and they, like, matched exactly, and that's where that character's description came from. I just thought it was just beautiful, you know, and,
Mhm.
Cade, the current book I'm working in, my mother had a cousin who's a lot younger than her, but he's older than me. He did pass away fairly recently.
Mm.
He was just a hulking figure of a guy, very attractive, just good old boy kind of a thing, and that's Cade in my mind. So, like, I don't
Mhm.
need to picture him because I just know Cade so well. Reverend Albright, people, when they read my books, they're like, "That's your grandpa." Because I knew my grandpa so like, I just know my grandpa, that when I write Reverend Albright, it's so easy for me. But then the other characters, I had to get pictures of people or models or whatever, so that, again, like, I made sure that the physicality, I kept it straight. Yep.
Yeah, and Maria says what can be tricky is writing physical description in first person because you hear negative things about like looking in the mirror to see what you look like all the time. Yeah, it can
Right.
be tricky. It's hard
It
to
can
do.
it can be tricky. You can have other characters if you're only, um if you only have one point of view, then you can have other people refer to their, like, something about them, and, like,
I
you just
wish
have
I
to
had
stretch it
curly
out.
hair like you. My curly hair had been a burden of my life. I hated my
Exactly.
curly hair, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
alright.
All right. So yeah, Piper, I discover as I write the story though. Me too. Same girl, same. And it see because and this is why I say I don't like other people's experiences are different. It's because usually I am someone who has a character and that is why I am writing. So I
Mhm.
don't really have a struggle like this in this particular kind of a way. Like I say that my character changed, but like I was coming to the computer to write his story. And so
Mhm.
like so your mileage may vary, like any other
Right.
advice we give on this show. I mean, people are as individual as fingerprints and snowflakes and all of that stuff. So, eat the meat and spit out the bones, but a lot of people have a story they wanna tell, and
Mhm.
they don't necessarily have characters to act out that story, and if that's you and you need to start to make characters that you know will be real to your audience, you need to make characters that are real to you. And so I think it just really depends on what kind of muse you have, for lack of a better word, right?
Mhm. Agree.
Yeah. Okay. And so then finally, our last category is emotional, which I also might say like psychological or whatever. Because the
Mhm.
first thing you have here is how have they been hurt?
This is my favorite section of questions, and I don't
Yeah.
it'd probably be the Rhonda's least favorite. Like, I
Yeah.
don't wanna say that I love to hurt my characters, but I love to, like, I love what the emotions that come out, from the pain. So, yeah, how have they been hurt? And if your characters have not been hurt before they're coming into this, I feel like it's gonna be hard for you to create a character arc because 'cause we've all been
Yeah.
hurt. We all have something in our past that we are either not dealing with or we have dealt with, and we could write about that, or there's always something in a person's life. And so if you want your characters to not be flat, you have to give them something that has happened to them. So how has he or she been hurt? Um, and where is that, where did that originate? And then the next question is, well, what does she or he want?
Okay, so let me just pause right here and put an
Okay.
asterisk next to that because I hate that question. I've
Mm,
hated it for my whole like writerly life because it'd be like, I don't know, like, they don't want anything, but, like, do you know what I mean? So,
I know, and I
I
know how
think
to
it's
answer this for you because I used to feel that way too, yeah.
I think it's just a personality thing that I have to get over because, like, a lot of times, like, for example, the little short that I wrote today,
Mhm.
like, in hindsight, I could dig out what the person wanted, but if
Yeah.
I had to wait till I knew that before I started writing, I
Mhm.
would never write a thing. So, again,
Mhm.
I think it's just personality.
So let me reframe it.
Yeah.
I didn't like it either because 'cause I'm like, I always thought like, they want like everybody, they want love. I'm writing romance, they want love. You need this question has to, and this is why I always put it right afterwards. It has to go hand in hand with their hurt. So
Oh, okay, gotcha.
for example, Cade's been hurt because or let's go with Colleen. Colleen has been hurt by her husband that just died. He was a liar, he was like philanderer, he was a gambler, like, and she was abused by him. And so what does she want? She wants to be left alone. She wants
She
to
thinks.
she thinks she wants control of her ranch so that she
Mhm.
can make ends meet without the money getting gambled away, and she doesn't want another man coming in and trying to take over her life. So now do you see what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't mean that what she wants is what she's gonna get in the end. I think I used to look at that question like, "Well, they want love," but we're not looking for what they're gonna get in the end. We're looking maybe for a misconception. We're looking for what they think they want this, but is it what they need? Probably not. So
Yeah.
if you change it like that and look at that, then you can take the hurt. Okay, so they were hurt this way. She was hurt by a man. What does she want? Not a man. Right? And so then the next question is, well, what does she have to lose? Why doesn't she want a man in her life? Why is she holding so tightly onto this ranch? And, well, what does she have to lose? Well, she has to lose her independence. She has to lose her home. Like she has nowhere else to go. She has to lose maybe any freedom or, like, freedom from abuse, like you list all those things out. It's not like before, like, when I first started doing questions, I'm like, "I don't know what they have to lose, being alone the rest of their life." No, that's not I mean, that's an obvious thing when you're writing romance, but so, for me, those questions that I used to hate is because I wasn't told that they need to be attached to the hurt.
I think I just hate them because I was always told, "Answer these questions before you start writing."
Mm,
And because it was like, you can't even write a good story if you don't know what your character wants. Like, this is always how it was framed to me. And it was just
mhm,
like, because again, if I look back, I can say, oh, yeah, this and this and this and this. You know what I'm saying? So I
right.
think the questions do have to be answered because it's just kind of like the recipe. So
Yeah,
whether you put it in there or you go back later and check to make sure that you've checked the boxes. Because
yes,
if you go back and look and you haven't checked the box, there's a red flag for you when you start self-editing, right? Like here's a
right,
place for you to say, "Ooh, I don't think that there's anything for this character to lose." So that's going to eliminate tension and potential for drama and making the story work. Like you can't leave these elements out even if they're things that you do unintentionally and you discover later that there they are.
mhm, agreed. Um, before we move on to the next one. Maria says, "Good tip, Jen. Now I kinda want Jamie to write a first point of view story about a character with burdensome curly hair."
Burdensome curly hair. I love
That's
it.
awesome. And Piper agrees with you. She can't, do the questions before I start either, but what Jamie is saying is you still gotta do the questions.
Yeah, they like,
Even
you
if
still
you
need to be able to answer them by what
Yeah.
you've read, right?
Right, and maybe I think, like, again, we always say, like, every writer is different and it might vary for you, but maybe as you write, you go in and fill us in, or maybe when you're done, you go back and answer all these questions, and your questions might be a little bit different than mine, but you gotta establish what those questions are based on how you write and based on what the expectation of your genre is, and we talked about this before,
Yeah.
the only way to know that is to read a lot in your genre and to pick up the cues of what other authors are doing.
What do you
So
think of this idea? If you are someone who didn't answer these questions before and you
mhm.
think your first draft is done, give these to your alpha reader. Give these to
Mm.
and see if they can answer these questions after they have read your work.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
That might
because
be hurtful, that might be painful to do, but that's a
but then
great
you
idea.
know, because if
Then you
your goal
know.
is to make the work good and to make people
Mhm.
care and want to continue reading, you want these elements to be there. Because if you think about like what makes a good story, these elements are all there and they make us compelled to continue reading.
Agreed. And Catherine says you can use these questions as sort of a living document. As you write
Yes.
and get to know the characters, you'll have more to add to it. Exactly. I mean, this I have a running document in Google Docs with each of my stories, and it's pretty lengthy, and it could get longer and longer and longer as I think about stuff. I can throw something else in there. All right,
Yeah,
there's
and this should be a part of your
yeah,
Bible if you're writing fantasy also.
right. All right, I have one more question that is imperative for me. If you write Christian, any genre, I think it's imperative, and I would even argue that even if you don't write Christian, you're a Christian writer, but you don't write Christian, I think this is an important question, is what is his or her spiritual struggle? Because yes, we write arcs. And the arcs are like, I don't like with Colleen. I don't want a man in my life. And then we see her grow closer to Kate and we see her realize that like not all men are alike. And then eventually she's going to fall in love. That's going to be her character arc, one of them. But that's just one character arc. I really feel like a really well written novel, our characters grow in many areas of their life. And if for me, it is always important that there's always a spiritual arc for my characters, both of my characters when I write. So when I start off, I'm like, what is her spiritual struggle? So for Colleen, her spiritual struggle is trusting God, like, or believing that God loves her. I'm sorry, Cade's is trusting God, but hers is believing that there is a God out there that loves her. Because if he loved her, why would he allow her to have dealt with the abuse that she had to deal with? And so that's her spiritual struggle. And I have to know that up front because I have to like set it up when I'm writing. And then as I'm working through the story, I have to remember like I got to show her like questioning things and show that part of her life either blossoming or getting worse or whatever I decide to do with the character's spiritual arc. I need to know in advance so that it's in there. I believe a lot of things you can go back and edit. I feel like the spiritual struggle is something that is so inherent in the story that it's kind of hard to just add it in later. But that's just my personal take on it.
I feel like when you have done these sprints and the weather has been a factor, it's almost like thematically in your work that her spiritual, like, because you
Mhm.
talk about like the cleansing and refreshing rain, you talk about
Uh-huh.
wind and tempest, and it's really actually quite beautifully done. I just
And
want to
that's the
say.
kind of stuff I'm talking about. If I didn't already know what her struggle was, like as I'm sprinting and like I get some sort of like inspiration, like the wind and the rain, which is funny. I was just editing that scene yesterday, like adding to it. When I start to write that, I know what she's struggling with. And so I know what this actually looks like and feels like to her, as opposed to if I didn't know what her struggle was. So yeah, good point.
All righty, that's great. And so, do we have anything more to add about interrogating our characters, Jen?
I don't think so. I hope that everybody enjoyed that because it was all a bunch of Jen without anyone else's, so it's Jen again, but, yeah.
Well, that's all right. I personally really loved this conversation, and I think
Okay.
it's been helpful to our listeners. I hope.
I hope so too.
Yeah,
Ultimately, that's all we ever want.
Piper says, as a person in real life, all of my issues ultimately have a spiritual aspect. So I
Right.
agree, Jen. The characters ought to have that too. I mean, we're mortals. I mean, unless you're doing vampires or something, and we all are going to die. And so thoughts about that. And even if you are a vampire, like that's kind of the point. You don't ever die. And so then what does that do with spiritual? Like, do you know what I'm saying? It's part of
Yeah.
the human experience to think about our mortality. And so then that's going to be asking these kinds of questions. I mean,
Mhm.
if you are human, you are going to cross those bridges, right?
Yep. Also, connectedness is really high for me and belief, and I'm so, like, it's easy for me to say, "Oh, I think it's really important," but, again, your book is your book, but that's my advice.
Right. Well, I don't think it's an optional if you're branding yourself as a Christian author,
Mhm.
honestly. All right, so we are at my favorite time of Friday, which is the feeding of the backs. What does that mean? Well, it's where we give each other some feedback on a piece of writing, and we only do positive feedback. Why, you say? Well, because we just wrote these, like literally 15 minutes or so before we went live. We set a timer and we sprinted for 15 minutes. That means
Literally, like,
writing, yes, just
we
like
waited till the last minute because we were talking. We're like, "Oh, we gotta sprint."
and so these are not edited works. So we're really kind to one another and we're gentle. And if you want to share your take on our prompt this week, please do in our Facebook group. We have a Facebook group, yes, and you should join it if you have not done so already. And
Yes, and
we
don't hate
will,
us for this prompt.
right. It was a random sentence generator. And again, we can blame Tina. Blame Tina
No,
because
she
she's not
wasn't.
here.
Oh, yeah, we can blame her, but she wasn't even at the meeting,
Yeah,
so it
because it's
wasn't
usually
her.
her thing. It's usually her. So we blame her because the prompt is bad, but now we'll blame her because the
Because she
prompt is
wasn't
bad because
Yeah,
she
because she
wasn't here.
wasn't here to do it. So that's we'll blame her. If Tina had been here, we wouldn't be giving you a bad prompt,
Yeah,
but
we wouldn't yeah, we would be totally praising her for the prompt that she picked.
poor Tina
But
never gets praised for prompts.
I know. So, but I came up with the random sentence from a generator. And what is it, Jen? And then tell us what you wrote with this beautiful prompt.
Ken's uncle has a chicken farm. And ladies and gentlemen, it was in quotes. So you had to use it
Oh,
verbatim.
no.
You didn't
Okay.
notice that?
No, I copied and pasted it not in quotes. Oops. Well, anyway,
Ah,
sorry.
ok
Well,
well,
good
I
luck to
did.
you.
I did use it verbatim.
All
So,
right, great.
okay. "Here, Mom, you be Ken." "Why can't I be Ken?" my husband asks. Ella looks at her father and gives him a frustrated sigh. "Because, Daddy, you have to be Eloise." Eloise is a character my husband created one day while playing with the girls. She's a very high pitched, high strung arch nemesis of our main hero, Barbie. She is a fan favorite among our girls, and although he moans constantly about being typecast in our little doll world, I'm pretty sure my husband adores playing Eloise. "Okay," I say, "why is Ken not wearing a shirt?" "Because," Lila says, "Ken's uncle has a chicken farm." Our youngest says this with such a matter of factness that I feel almost ashamed that I don't see the correlation. I look at my husband, who shrugs at me and says in his best Eloise voice, "Duh, everybody knows that." I shrug as well and position myself crisscross applesauce in front of the large wooden Barbie house my husband fought against me buying years ago. $300? Are you serious? He had said. The girls are only toddlers. I know, but if we add one more blinkety blink dingalingy toddler toy to their collection, I might lose my mind.
Mhm.
But aren't they too young for a Barbie house? I rolled my eyes. Were you ever a little girl? No. But guess who was? Me. I was a little girl. You're just going to have to trust me on this one. And guess who was right? Me. I was right. My purse is so much bigger than your Michael Kors knockoff, Eloise hyphen husband's shrill voice announced. My girls burst into hysterical laughter, even though I doubted they had any idea who Michael Kors was or what on earth a knockoff was. Barbie wanted to buy the real deal, I chimed in, deepening my voice as low as possible, but I said $300 is too much. Eloise's body quickly turned toward Ken. "Well, when's the last time you were a girl?" Eloise said. I looked at my husband and he smirked. "Okay," Ken said. "I guess I'll buy the purse." I stood. "Where are you going?" husband, not Eloise, asked. "To buy the purse." To buy the purse. And so began the discussion of, "We were only playing." That was it.
Yay! That is so amazing.
Thanks.
That was so great.
It is not true. This is not like fictionalized what is it that Rhonda calls it? Nonfiction,
Creative
creative
nonfiction?
nonfiction. The only thing that's true in this is the dollhouse. When Joelle was probably 4,
That's your older one.
my oldest, and my middle one would have been like 18 months, and Phoebe was a newborn. That Christmas, we bought this giant dollhouse, and he's like, and for all 3 of them, instead of buying a bunch of little presents, and he's like, "It's not fair. Phoebe, like, won't doesn't care about this, and Chloe is still too young." And I'm like and she's like, "It's really only a present from Joelle." I'm like, "It's not just a present for Joelle. You need to trust me on this." And it has been the most beloved toy that has ever entered this. We still play with it. We still go in and, like, arrange furniture, or, like, when my girls aren't around, like, we'll go make the dolls do crazy things, and then they come back from wherever they are and they see it, like, it's great. So, anywho,
I
that was it.
love that, and the dad character, Piper's with me. I love the dad having to be the girl. Yes, you rope yourself and then you're typecast, but he loves it. Like, we
That's
all know this character right away.
yes, that actually is kind of like also creative nonfiction, because my husband always gets roped into being like girl things and stuff, and he acts like he doesn't want to be, and he absolutely loves it. So
Shell also says that was so fun, Jen.
thanks. Thank you.
Yeah,
I didn't
I
know what
love
else to
that.
do with it. As soon as I saw Ken, I'm like, my mind went to Barbie. And I'm like, I guess I'm writing about Barbie. Gigi.
Yeah,
She says,
Gigi's
shh. Go ahead.
good. No, you do it.
Shirtless Ken. And then she's laughing. Everyone should have guess the chicken farm correlation. This was so awesome. So fun. I was
Yes,
gonna write further about how, like, somewhere she had seen a farmer, like, with like bib overalls with no shirt, but I was like, that is gonna get too much away from the actual story. So
right,
again, it's
great
just a sprint.
choice. But
Yeah.
that's a great choice right there, and I would argue for keeping it if we were gonna edit this because
Mhm.
it's so true to toddler form. Like,
Yes.
you have no idea why her little brain made this connection, but she will look at
Right.
you like,
Duh.
"Duh." You know what I mean? It's
Yes.
so great. That's one of the joys of having little people around you.
Yeah.
You are so dumb, and you have no idea how dumb you are. It's the
Agreed.
best.
We used to play with this, Little People castle, and I bought
Oh.
when my girls were little, we did not have a lot of money at all, and so I bought s one year, I bought Christmas presents. I had my older stepkids that were, like, children then, and so for Joelle, I went to the resale shop and I bought all used toys. She was so little, she didn't know the difference, and that we still have the castle. We got rid of most of the other Little People, but that castle I'm sorry, my dogs are going crazy. Can you hear them in the background?
Barely, just barely.
Okay, that castle got more play with than anything, and I always had to be the queen because I would do this really bad British accent, and I would just yell all the time at the other Little People, "I am the queen, do as I say," and, like, but really high pitch, and since I'm having thyroid cancer, it's really hard for me to go high pitch, so it's not as fun anymore, but, so every so often when, like, they're like, "Why do we have to do this?" And I will just holler that out to my kids, but
That's fun.
yeah, so there are in our family, there are certain doll characters that appear from the parents every so often.
Well, I love Eloise as being the ambassador of all of those.
Yes.
Great. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that, Jen.
Yeah, thanks for letting me. All
All
right,
right.
JD, what did you do?
Yeah, Ken's uncle has a chicken farm, and here's where my brain went. I love sprints. Okay. Is this it? I tried not to sound dubious as we rolled past the broken wagon wheel. I slid my finger over the button that would whir my window down and was met with a blast of summer breeze, carrying along with it a whiff of cow manure. The
Mm.
tires crunching on the gravel reminded me of summer camp. The weeds, taller than my head, and the scarecrow, which in my opinion was just as effective at warning off humans as it had likely once been at scaring off crows, reminded me of an old 80s slasher flick my parents had insisted I endure last Halloween. No one answered my question. I wasn't surprised. Neither mom nor dad had said a word since the argument at the Circle K about whether or not we were actually lost. We spent so much time there trying to somehow get a signal back on mom's phone while dad folded and refolded an actual paper map. Can you believe it? That I was able to fill my fountain drink cup twice. A decision I regretted as the dirt road we were traversing suddenly became as lumpy as that old summer camp mattress. I was just about to ask Dad to let me out to take a bit of a walk into the tall grass and relieve myself when the weeds gave way to a neatly mowed patch of yard. A buttercup colored single wide trailer with teal shutters that had hearts cookie cut into them was the focal point of the tableau, and affixed to the top of it was a teal sign with loopy white letters. Ken's Coop, it read. Well, I'll be, I said. And I knew my dad was thinking it as well, on account of some of the stuff he was screaming at mom while she stood outside the Buick with her arm raised impotently toward the malfunctioning satellites. Apparently, dad had never had any faith in Uncle Ken and his harebrained schemes. This had given me much to think about as I watched the soda bubbles climb my red, thick straw. My thick red straw. Uncle Ken's fantasies of retiring from factory work someday to be his own boss had always been great fun to listen to. I guess I was kind of too much of a kid at that time to realize Uncle Ken had always been there with his hand out. The
Mm.
car had barely stopped its post park bucking when Mom flung the door open and started stomping her way toward the little set of wooden steps that provided entry to Ken's coupe. She didn't slam the door, which somehow made her seem even more fed up. Dad didn't turn the engine off right away. He met my eyes in the rear view, and for a moment, I felt he was asking me permission to jam it into reverse and to peel out of that parking lot fast enough to leave skid marks. I think I might have encouraged him if I didn't have to pee so bad. Instead, I said, "Let's check it out. Could be good for a couple of laughs." He pulled his eyes hastily from the mirror as if the question in them had never existed. To be sure I understood, he whapped my head as we exited the car and grumbled, "Make sure you mind your manners." I didn't mind. I knew he was only reminding himself.
So good. Oh my word. First of all, I don't know how you ended up traveling with me in the summertime when I was a kid and then remembered it all so that you could write it, but, like, that was so good, Jamie.
Thank
Alright.
you.
So before all of the, because I know that a lot of accolades are gonna start coming in on this, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned earlier when we were talking about, like, asking these questions and like that, and you said, "Well, I wouldn't know," but, like, talking about, like, this, thing that I just wrote before I wrote it, I wouldn't have known these answers. Can you answer some of these questions now that you've written this? Like
Yeah.
yeah, so, like, what is it they want? Like, you can you
Well, immediately he wants to use the restroom. But
Yes.
that's not even what I was thinking about when we were talking earlier.
Yeah.
What he wants is like peace in his home.
Mm.
Like, this is not a happily married couple. This is not a
Mm.
happy home. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he's like learned to like pay attention to the bubbles in his straw as opposed to mom and dad fighting again. See what I mean? So like,
Yeah, and, like, I feel like you could have a "what does this character want?" and that never shows up in the story, but it still flavors who your character is and how they react to things, right? Because is
mhm.
this a complete story, or do you think it's just a scene of a bigger story?
No, this is done.
Yeah.
Oh, in case there were any questions, it is Coop with a K.
Yes, and
Has
it has
to
to
be.
be. Alright, Shell says, "Your description makes it make it your descriptions make it so I can see and feel everything right along with them." I absolutely agree with that. Piper says, "I love the whole had to pee thing, like, I've totally been there, LOL." Yeah, that's what I'm saying. She must have been
Mhm.
following me along on all these, trips that we had to take to, like, random family members in the South, and, like, it was always in a car, and back then we had paper maps. So you were writing it as if it was current, but, like, I was like, "Oh, yeah, the paper maps, totally know."
Mhm.
One time we were lost, and, like, I'm sitting in the back seat, and I'm being really quiet. I was like a teenager, not driving yet, but I was, like, probably 13 maybe, and my parents are fighting in the middle of the and I finally, after, like, probably half an hour, I finally spoke up and said, "I think I know how to get back to the highway," and they're like, "Okay," and I'm like, "I just feel like we're close to a mall." Like, and I said, I was pointing out the different, like, telephone poles. I said, "I think if you go here down towards this direction, I think we're gonna come to a mall, and malls are always by the highway."
Very
Sure
good.
sure enough, we found a mall, and my dad was like so, like, they were fighting, but then after that, it just became this hilarious thing, and the whole rest of the trip home to Michigan was my dad teasing me about my like, "The mothership called you home," like, kind of a thing, so and that's how I felt when you're reading that, I felt like, yeah, the paper map and,
That's
the
awesome, Jen. Yeah, of
it was
course
a
you know
funny
where the
story
mall is. Yeah, go dad. That's very cute. I
to
love that.
yeah, how weird. How did I know where a mall was? So weird. Even at the time, I'm like, "This is crazy." So, anyway, so, oh, and then Gigi says, "Jamie, how awesome. So many details immersed me in this story. Your characters are so real. Love this." Yeah, always.
Thank you.
This is why we
Appreciate
always want you to write more. We're like, "Hey, can that be more than just a little short story?" Just because we love the characters so
that.
much. Even though I acknowledge that so many of the things that you write, like, are complete and, like, beautiful the way they are, I just love the characters so much, I want more. So
So what's interesting though is like I know what the dad wants, I know what the mom wants. Like it's just really interesting how like you can then go back and you can put this checklist up against there. And any place where you see it's weak, if you're going to continue writing, you might think, I might need to shore that up or clarify that for the reader, or do I even know the answer to that?
Mhm.
So this has been really fun. What a wonderful way to launch my little hiatus here.
Aw. Well, you're gonna be missed, Jamie.
Well, thank you. And so, by the way, we'll talk about our what's next. And what's next for me is to figure out what my new normal looks like with this new work schedule. What's next for you, Jen?
Well, I made it set a goal for 1,000 words a day for Nano, and
Wow.
I've not made it, so don't be impressed.
Have you
Set
done
it.
any words?
Yes,
Then you
I
deserve
have.
praise.
Thank
Good for
you.
you.
And I'm
What are you
discovering
writing?
Widows of the West one,
Okay,
and,
good.
like, I feel like this I was telling this to Jason yesterday, like, I feel like this book should be done. Like, I feel like or maybe it was Tina I was talking to, I've been writing in it for so long that I feel like it should be no, it was Jason. I feel like it should be done, and, it's not, and so it's just kinda weird, like, I just feel like I just need to, like, finish it, kinda like, just let's just get it out there. So, we'll see how this goes, but yeah, I hit my word goal yesterday, and it was kind of a struggle because again, I'm taking all these sprints and I gotta piece them together or get
That's
rid
what
of
I was
them
gonna
or
ask you.
yeah.
Yes, and I knew we're short on time, but is that what you're doing? So are you
Mhm.
so you've got your outline and then you're kind of filtering through your sprints to see have you already written that and then you're putting it in there?
I already did that. I or except for, like, the last 5 months maybe are not in there, so I need to go back and put those in, but I already went through all of my sprints for the past 2 years, and I put them in my outline, and
Wow.
then, and then I have an area of sprints that don't really fit anywhere, but the funny thing is that I think there's only 1 down there that I haven't figured out, and it will fit. Like, all the sprinting that I did kind of, like, fits into the outline, like,
Wow.
it isn't like random, like, well, the character won't really do that or what, like, it's they all kind of have a place with
Mhm.
through editing and then writing around them and stuff, so, yeah, it's been an interesting experience for sure,
I
so
love it. I can't wait till it's, something we can hold in our little
I know, me
hands.
too.
How great.
Alright, what about you, Jamie?
Oh, I'm just gonna try to figure out what the new normal looks like and when I can write and all of that because, sadly, the office hours is not gonna be possible with this new work schedule either, so woe is me, but, I kinda have a feeling that, like, it's gonna shake things up a little bit and make me feel more like, "Oh, I need to get over there because otherwise it's being neglected," right?
Right, and I've talked to other people too that have, like, had to go back to work or that, like, took off of work so they could write full time and found that when they had another job and then they had to fit writing in, that, they got more writing done because it wasn't like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I have all day to write." It was like, "I only have this 1 hour," or whatever, and they ended up being way more productive, so we'll see.
we'll
You don't know.
see.
Yep.
And then, Piper says her what's next is to start rewriting her book 1 with the feedback that she got. That's so exciting.
Exciting.
It's so exciting that you're rewriting, and if you join our Facebook group so you can read Piper's little sort of like saga because we're already at time here, but it's fascinating what she ended up doing and the feedback that she's gotten and how she's gone about getting it.
Mhm.
And I think that it's been helpful because I know somebody else in our audience has reached out to get similar kinds of feedback from people that they normally would have just said was a beta reader or something. So
Right.
join our Facebook group, listeners of the Christian Indie Writer podcast. And I will probably be like a desert of loneliness, missing everybody so
Mhm.
bad that I will need you all to be posting in there so that I can give my 2 cents and stay in
Alright.
touch with you all. Okay. All
Alright.
right. So that concludes this episode of the Christian Indie Writers Podcast. Until next time, may your pen be prolific, may your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ. Bye now.
Bye, everyone.